brothers and documented gang members are headed to prison after a judge sentenced them each to 30 years for drug crimes.
In February 2026, where the shadow of the notorious fully blooded Felons gang once covered every corner, sowing terror from drugs to guns. But then the situation changed overnight when the iron fist of the RICO Act came down, turning those who thought themselves the law into the hunted. Is the 8-year sentence for Kingpin Dontez Hammond truly the end for this empire, or just the beginning of a more brutal underground purge? Before we dive into this secret file, hit that subscribe button and leave your comment. Has justice truly been served? The answer lies right after this. The Cleveland sky in the middle of February 2026 seemed to carry the characteristic gray of the American Midwest. But inside the federal building, the atmosphere was hotter than ever, as the scales of justice prepared to come down on one of the key links of the underworld. February 12, 2026 was the fateful moment for Dontez Hammond, a name that had caused so much terror for the peaceful neighborhoods here. It was not just an ordinary criminal trial, but the climax of a long and persistent war between law enforcement and the darkness of organized crime. When the judge's gavel rang out decisively in the courtroom sentencing Dontez Hammond to 8 years in prison, that was also when a powerful message was sent from the U.S. Department of Justice to the entire underworld hiding in the shadows. We can imagine the tension on the face of the defendant, now 36 years old, as he had to face the consequences of his days astray in the fully blooded Felons gang. This sentence is not merely punishment for an individual, but it is a symbol of the collapse of a criminal empire that once considered itself the law of the streets. Let's try putting ourselves in the shoes of the honest citizens living in Cleveland who have had to endure the invisible fear from the presence of the fully blooded Felons gang for so many years to understand the value of this event. When the Department of Justice announced this victory, they were not just putting out dry statistics, but they were retelling the story of the liberation of the community from the claws of violence and drugs. Hammond bowing his head to plead guilty to the RICO conspiracy and drug trafficking charges is the clearest proof that no fortress of crime is impenetrable. The story of Dontez Hammond leads us deep into understanding an ultimate legal weapon that the U.S. government has used as a fatal blow to criminal organizations, which is the RICO Act. Originally born to counter the illustrious mafia families of the past, RICO has now become a true nightmare for modern street gangs like the fully blooded Felons. This act allows prosecutors to view Hammond's actions not as fragmented pieces, but as part of an overall picture full of dark conspiracies and systematic crime. We wonder if without the existence of the RICO Act, would individuals like Hammond be able to easily circumvent the law and continue to sow pain for society. Proving Hammond was part of a criminal enterprise completely changed the landscape of the legal battle, forcing him to take responsibility not only for his own actions, but also for the existence of the organization he served. Do you think applying RICO is the necessary and most effective measure to root out gangs? Leave a comment with number 1 if you agree, and number 2 if you think there needs to be another solution. The 8-year prison sentence for Hammond is the result of a painstaking investigation process where agents and prosecutors had to string together the smallest clues to weave an inescapable net of justice. The combination of weapons possession and drug trafficking in Hammond's file is the deadly formula that gangs today frequently apply to maintain power and profit. We can clearly see that guns and illicit substances always go hand in hand like a shadow in the underworld, creating a spiral of violence without end, washing away the peace of so many families. Looking beyond the borders of Cleveland, we see that the story of the fully blooded Felons is not an off-key note, but part of a symphony of crime suppression ringing out across the U.S. in early 2026. In the Southern District of Texas, a similar scenario is also taking place with the collapse of the Free Money Gang, where dozens of members have been arrested and face justice. The coincidence in timing and method of operation between these two cases shows us a panoramic picture of the synchronized and determined effort of the Department of Justice in cleaning up the streets. Imagine the chaos that the Free Money Gang caused in Houston, with murders, robberies, and drug trafficking happening like clockwork, directly threatening the lives of innocent people. The indictment, including 18 counts for members of this gang, is proof that their brutality and recklessness have reached the limit of the law's and human conscience's endurance. Is there an underground link between these gangs on a national scale, or are they just cancer cells developing independently but sharing a cruel and greedy nature? The event in Jacksonville, where a drug trafficking leader was sentenced for a shooting on Interstate 95, further emphasizes the aggressive nature and disregard for life of these criminals. We shudder when thinking of the scene of bullets tearing through the wind on a crowded highway, where the lives of traffic participants become more fragile than ever before the gun barrels of the perpetrators. This incident poses a big question about the safety of public spaces when gang violence is no longer confined to dark alleys, but is spilled out onto the traffic arteries of the country. The intimate connection between drugs and hot weapons that we see in the cases of Hammond or the Free Money Gang is the focus that the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration (DEA) is striving to warn about. The One Pill Can Kill campaign is not just a media slogan, but a desperate cry for help from the victims of the fentanyl crisis devastating the younger generation. Let us reflect on whether the huge profits from trading these pills of death are the main motivation making gangs willing to arm themselves to the teeth to protect their turf. The presence of names like Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes or the MS-13 gang on the DEA's most wanted list reminds us that this war is not limited to within the U.S., but carries an international stature. Transnational criminal networks are transporting illicit substances and weapons across the border day and night, turning cities like Cleveland or Houston into lucrative consumption markets. Do you think that tighter border control will be the key to stopping the flow of drugs and crime, or is community education the root solution? Comment number 1 for borders and number 2 for education. Returning to Dontez Hammond, the fact that he possessed guns while being prosecuted shows a disregard for the law to the point of arrogance and a blind faith in the power of violence. This is an important detail, helping us understand better the psychology of those living outside the law, those who always believe that a gun in hand can solve every problem. However, that very arrogance became the trap leading him to a tragic end behind prison bars, where he will have 8 long years to reflect on the wrong choices of his life. The role of the Federal Bureau of Investigation (FBI) in these feats is undeniable, as they silently collected evidence and built surveillance files over a long period before casting the net for arrest. Let us imagine the long sleepless nights of the agents, the tense wiretaps, and the moments facing danger to bring peace to society. They are the silent heroes behind the victory news people who have accepted sacrificing personal happiness to protect the ideal of justice and social order. The U.S. Attorney's offices also play a pivotal role when transforming surveillance evidence into sharp legal arguments before the federal court, ensuring no criminal can escape punishment. The smooth coordination between the FBI, DEA, and prosecutors creates a law enforcement machine operating smoothly and effectively, smashing every plot and trick of criminals. We can trust that as long as this coordination is maintained, justice will still be executed strictly and uncompromisingly. However, the victory over the fully blooded felons or free money gang is only the first steps in a long journey full of thorns ahead for the U.S. justice system. Crime today is constantly transforming, with increasingly sophisticated tricks from using cryptocurrency to launder money to exploiting high technology to run illegal operations. In your opinion, what is the biggest challenge that law enforcement agencies will have to face in the next decade as technology develops by leaps and bounds? Publicizing the details of sentences and crime suppression strategies is a wise move by the Department of Justice to make operations transparent and reinforce public trust in the government system. When people understand clearly the efforts the government is making, they will feel more secure and more ready to cooperate in reporting crime and protecting regional security. We realize that the power of the law lies not only in strict sentences, but also in the support and consensus of the entire social community. The 8-year sentence for Dontez Hammond, although not the highest sentence, is weighty enough to send a warning to anyone intending to venture onto the path of sin. It affirms that no gang member title can protect you from the punishment of the law, and every criminal act will have to be paid for dearly. Do you think this sentence is strong enough to deter, or are heavier penalties needed for organized crime? Leave a comment with number 1 if you find it sufficient, and number 2 if you want to increase the penalty. The war against organized crime gangs is like cutting off the heads of the Hydra monster. When one falls, another may grow if we do not eliminate its nutrient source. That nutrient source is poverty, lack of education, and social injustices that have pushed many young men like Hammond into the arms of gangs. We need to look at this issue from a more humane perspective to find fundamental solutions to prevent crime right from the bud instead of just solving the top. Every time a gang is dismantled is a time the people of Cleveland, Houston, or Jacksonville get to breathe fresher air and have less anxiety every time they go out at night. The tireless efforts of the authorities deserve recognition and respect from each of us, those who enjoy the fruits of that peace. Let us hope for a future where names like fully blooded felons are just the past, and the younger generation will grow up in a safe and healthy environment. The event of February 12, 2026 will be remembered as an important milestone marking the strong transformation of the justice system in dealing with new-style gang crime. It shows the flexible adaptation and iron determination of the government in protecting the core values of civilized society against the attack of evil. In the future, can we witness a society completely clean of criminal gangs, or is that forever just a distant dream impossible to touch? Ending the story about Dontez Hammond's sentence, we do not just stop at updating news, but also draw profound lessons about the value of life and the responsibility of each individual to the community. Let this story become the motivation for us to join hands to build a society that respects the law, where justice always wins and good always pushes back evil. Let us wait and follow the next steps of the Department of Justice in this arduous war with absolute trust in the strictness of the law. Dontez Hammond having to serve an 8-year prison sentence is also a long enough time for him to separate from the toxic environment and have the opportunity to redo his life if truly repentant. The federal prison system is not only a place of detention, but also a place of rehabilitation, with the hope of returning honest citizens to society after they have paid their debt to the law. We wonder if after 8 years, when stepping out of the prison gate, what kind of person Hammond will become, and whether society is willing to open its arms to receive him back. The collapse of the links in the fully blooded Felons gang also simultaneously weakens the power structure of this organization, making it difficult for them to maintain illegal activities on a large scale as before. This is a golden opportunity for social organizations and local authorities to penetrate affected areas to reconstruct the community and support vulnerable people. We need practical action programs to fill the power vacuum that gangs leave behind with positive values and economic development opportunities for the people. The Department of Justice's strategy of using RICO can be likened to a sword of Damocles always hanging over the head of any crime boss daring to challenge the power of the state. It forces gang members to live in constant fear because any of them could become a witness against their accomplices in exchange for leniency. How do you assess the humanity of using plea agreements to break gangs from the inside? Let your opinion be known by commenting number 1 if you support and number 2 if you oppose. Each sentence pronounced is a brick building a solid fortress, protecting national security and social safety order against waves of crime that are increasingly aggressive. We cannot deny that this struggle requires persistent perseverance and the silent sacrifice of so many people who are dedicating themselves day and night to the cause of protecting justice. Spend a minute reflecting on those great contributions and ask yourself what you can do to contribute a small part to the work of preserving peace for the neighborhood you live in. The information about the Free Money Gang case in Texas or the shooting in Jacksonville are also indispensable pieces for us to understand clearly the complex and diverse nature of modern gang crime. They no longer operate in a fragmented, spontaneous style, but have close organizational links and use increasingly sophisticated and unpredictable methods of operation. This requires law enforcement forces to also constantly innovate, thinking improve professional qualifications, and equip modern technology so as not to fall behind in this race. We also need to frankly recognize that drugs are still the deep root of every problem, as it is both the financial source feeding gangs and the direct cause leading to violent acts. As long as the demand for drugs still exists in society, gangs will still find every way to supply and make a profit regardless of all legal risks. The question posed is how can we minimize this demand most effectively through health education or other social intervention measures. The image of Dontez Hammond bowing his head to plead guilty before the federal court will remain in the minds of many as a symbol of the failure of the violent gangster lifestyle. It reminds us that no matter how aggressive and brutal, eventually evil will have to submit to the power of justice and righteousness. Let us spread this message to young people so that they never set foot on the path of error that Hammond and his accomplices took. Finally, this sentence is a stern affirmation of the sovereignty of the law on every inch of the United States of America, where there is no forbidden zone for crime. The Department of Justice and related agencies will continue their noble mission to ensure that every citizen can live in a safe, free, and fair environment. Let us trust and support those efforts for a brighter future for everyone, where the darkness of crime will be pushed back by the light of justice. When night falls on the city of Cleveland, the streetlights turning on to dispel the gloom of winter is also when the people here feel warmer with the news of justice's victory. The story of Dontez Hammond and the fully blooded Felons gang closes, but its echo will resound forever as a strict deterrent and a new hope for the community. Let us together write new pages of history for this city with solidarity, love, and the spirit of respecting the law so that Cleveland remains a place worth living. Each of us is a part of this big story, and it is our attitude towards life and our actions that will contribute to shaping the appearance of society in the future. Always be vigilant against the bad fight to protect the good and never compromise with crime in any form. That is the best way for us to pay tribute to the efforts of law enforcement forces and protect the peaceful life of ourselves and our loved ones. Closing this case file, we do not forget to look back at the long journey that the authorities have passed with so much sweat effort and intellect poured in. This victory belongs to no one alone, but is the victory of the entire society, of the belief in justice and the aspiration for peace. Let us together preserve and promote those good values to build a United States that is increasingly civilized, wealthy, strong, and safer for everyone. In the endless flow of time, cases like this will become valuable historical lessons to teach future generations about the law of cause and effect and the strictness of the law. Let us live and work according to the Constitution and the law so that every day that passes is a meaningful day, contributing positively to the common development of humanity. And always remember that the light of justice will always shine into the darkest corners to bring fairness to this life.